Hey, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Well, I'm excited. I'm very, very excited. We have an SEC offensive coordinator draft today. Our annual, we can call it annual now. This is the second year that we've done this. Our annual SEC offensive coordinator draft. When I texted you that we were doing this on Tuesday, I didn't just say definitively we were doing this. I asked. I'm going to be honest. There was a lot less fear than there was last year when I came up with this idea and then immediately panicked when I realized how difficult it was going to be.
Yes, and especially in like the specific year we started in was like, what was the number? It was like 10 new OCs or something last season. Yeah, and it was like, okay, so we were betting on people's potential, basically, right? And there were some that worked out, some that did not. But that would have been almost the hardest year in SEC history to predict this. You know, you got Texas and Oklahoma coming over. Maybe that's a little bit different. But there was just a lack of tape on guys. Like Tommy Rees is a great example. We had truly no idea what he was going to do at Alabama. That was a safety pick, you know?
Yes. Great show coming up today, by the way, with my guy Chris Plank talking all things Oklahoma, plus jersey contest. I am wearing a Cubs jersey that I think will have the highest approval rating of any jersey that's been worn so far and maybe through the end of this. That's a little teaser if you're wondering who it is.
Sammy Sosa.
It is not. No. Sammy Sosa, his approval rating is actually a lot trickier among Cub fans, at least.
Yeah.
Than one would assume. But no, even higher approval rating than Sammy Sosa.
He's the only unlikable Cub I could even think of, you know, like a season of Aroldis Chapman maybe, but every Cub that I've seen, who's unlikable that's a Cub?
Milton Bradley. You want to talk unlikable? Milton Bradley is all-time unlikable. Joe Borowski, the guy that when I asked him for an autograph when I was bat boy for the Cubs, that's a little teaser for this jersey. When I was bat boy for the Cubs and he said to me, "Kid, I'm eating." The only person in the entire Cubs locker room that was loaded with future All-Stars, Hall of Famers, that guy looked at me and said, "Kid, I'm eating." Joe Borowski.
See, I touched a nerve there. You got way more unlikable Cubs than I do.
Yes, I do. All right. So as you mentioned, this did not go well last year. I think we felt okay about it at the time, but this is entirely different this year because we don't have nearly as many new faces as we did last year. Of the 10 that we drafted last year in our SEC offensive coordinator draft, only 3 of them are still at their current jobs. It's so bad.
Yeah, and there are some extenuating circumstances, right?
Yes.
Like Nick Saban retiring, and Tommy Rees doesn't have a job. He probably would have stayed if Nick Saban stayed. I would think they did well enough toward the end, right? And so there's some other like Denbrock being hired by Notre Dame, so like he was fired, right? So, but yeah, 3 and 10 is a pretty bad number to me.
Yeah, in case you don't just have the graphic pulled up, sitting there laughing at us. My roster was Bobby Patrino, Liam Cohen, Dan Enos, woof, Mike Bobo, Dowell Loggins. Your roster was Mike Denbrock, Kevin Barbet, woof, Phil Montgomery, woof, Tommy Rees, Charlie Weiss Jr. Well, we were talking about this earlier today. I'm not even sure I know who won. And we've had an entire season to digest that.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, you clearly have the better top end because Denbrock would, if we were doing a redraft, Denbrock goes 1, right? Like, no question about it. But I think my depth was better overall because I would argue that 4 of my coordinators were at least in good standing with their fan bases at the end of it. But I don't know that makes a better overall draft because your 1 was just so much better than I think the rest.
Yeah, I went moonshot. Look, you could talk about how wrong I was about Matt House, but I was right about LSU's offense last year. I felt like once I got him, I was set. So I took a couple of swings, missed on both, right? A little bit of Schwarber action, lead off dinger, for the rest of the day, right? But then I went back around and I was smart. I was like, okay, I'm going to get some safe guys that aren't going to get fired. And so I think we had 2 worlds there, you know?
You had a Schwarber draft. You did. This is not a Schwarber jersey. I've already busted out my blue Cubs Schwarber jersey. This is not that. He actually might, his approval rating is going to be pretty close to this guy. But I think this guy is held in a different regard. So we'll get to that later in jersey contest. Okay, so just a little disclaimer. Only one real rule that I think we need to keep in mind. Obviously, you can't draft the same person. We're drafting different coordinators here. But they must be OCs and not like a Jeff Lebby situation who was calling plays as a head coach have to be defined in the title, and their duties is probably what's going to determine how high that they are drafted in this. So would you like Will first pick or second two?
Second two.
Golly, I was afraid you were going to say that. I hate that you say it. Okay. This is what I'm terrified here.
Okay.
If I had second two, I would be like, all right, where I'm getting two of my top three, no issues whatsoever. Maybe I still will get two of my top three, but I did not think that there was a definitive number one. Okay. So I'm acknowledging that. I'm acknowledging that before I say my pick, which is probably a bad way to sell it. But let's do this. I'm going with Kirby Moore. I'm going Kirby Moore 1. Yeah, 1. That's right. Let's start with a surprise here. Kirby Moore is someone that at this time last year, we're going, Drink has finally given up the offense. This is a situation where we're talking about, what's his job security? Could he get fired after 2023? He's doing the thing that feels like a little bit of like a last-ditch effort. You're going to bring in somebody to be your play caller for the first time. Didn't work out for Jimbo Fisher, even though the offense improved, as we mentioned with Robert Patrick Patrino. But this is what Kirby Moore did last year at Mizzou, drilling a contested three as the clock is winding down. Mm-hmm. That's what he did. He stepped in.
Or a very long field goal against Kansas State, as some would argue.
Yes, a Harrison Meebus moonshot for the win. That's exactly what he did. He steps in and unlocks all of those things in the passing game that we had been talking about Mizzou lacking for the first 3 years of the Drink era. Significantly better. Not just Luther Burden III and Theo Weiss, Brady Cook as well. You can't tell me that things didn't open up for Cody Schrader as a direct result of that passing game, because we've seen great running backs at Mizzou. We saw Larry Roundtree. We saw Tyler Beatty. We saw these guys have success in Drink's offense, but seeing a passing game do it was just different, and that's why Mizzou was different. They improved by nearly 8 points per game. They went from 87th in the country to 21st in yards per play. There is zero reason why in 2024, with Kirby Moore back in the fold, that Mizzou should not have a top 4 SEC offense. It is going to be that good. And here's what I believe. This is something that we'll talk about a lot, because something that we have talked about a lot, because I think it's just really interesting, the power dynamics and how it breaks down. Some offensive-minded head coaches can let it go, and some cannot. I believe Drink has let it go. I do. Frozen's great. Moana's better. That's just my opinion. But that is based on everything.
Don't worry, buddy. You're going to get plenty of reps of both coming up. You'll have plenty of time to evaluate, all right?
I know, right? It's Moana 2's coming out in November. I'm thinking we might do a little back-to-back action, just kind of see, what the feel is like. She's going to be like a year and a half old. That nobody cares about that. But based on everything that I have read and heard about, the relationship that he has with Kirby Moore, who absolutely could have left for other places but stayed at Mizzou, I think that he has put his OC in positions to succeed, and he has not micromanaged, and that's really important. I did not think that I would be so high on a guy that's a year younger than me after he just kept getting promoted on Kalen DeBoer's staff at Fresno State, or I guess not all Kalen DeBoer's staff at Fresno State, but somebody that's worked with him, has worked with Ryan Grubb, and maybe not even the best coordinator of his own family, according to those who paid too much attention to the NFL. I'd take Kirby Moore over Kellen Moore. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion.
Man, this guy knows everybody, too. That's the crazy. He's like so connected. That's, yeah.
Very connected. So Kirby Moore, 1-1. Stand up, Mizzou.
Yeah, I think he's really smart. That's one that was it probably would have gone higher last year. This is why I love the 1 versus 2, because that was a guy I was evaluating at 2 or 3.
Yep.
But this is going to be a hilarious back to back here. I'm going to go ahead and get Bobo. I think that I think that the way that I could argue that Bobo kind of like carried me last year in terms of got him late, whatever. But if you look at Carson Beck coming back,
whoa. I got Bobo last year.
Oh, sorry. I switched him and Reese. Whoops.
I got Bobo. Yep. Let the record show. I took him with my 4th pick. I was a Bo-lever. Okay, I very much wasn't. But go off. Bobo is your first pick.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. So good point. Yeah. It's like that's the guy that was available late. It was my point that I was making. And, just the talent at Georgia, the fact that Carson Beck, was a guy that we weren't sure, was it going to be him or Vandegrift? So many moving pieces in the offense, even though they're losing Bowers, talent is not something that's ever going to worry me at Georgia. It's always going to be about quarterback play / management. And that situation is better this year than it was last year.
I love this pick. I had Bobo at third on my board. I almost had him at second. I really did. I even thought about him at one. I legitimately did. Look, I hated the notion last year that Bobo was destined to succeed just because Georgia had so much talent. I've talked about this a lot. And for those who said, well, look at the things that he did 10 years earlier, I was like, this sport changes so much. And if the top thing in your resume is something that happened 10 years ago, get lost, Jimbo Fisher. I don't like that. Okay. That's not going to work. But I am such a believer now, trademark pending, because of everything that he did after those slow starts, right? Like he figured out the way to uncork this offense where Beck, once he starts getting those throws downfield between the hashes, you're like, this offense hums, and it's got some serious juice to it. He got the tight ends incorporated the way that I hoped he would in that year that he spent being able to watch Todd Monken run this offense. And you saw Brock Bowers when he was healthy, he was excellent. Oscar Delp had his moments. Lawson Lucky looked pretty good in this offense as well at times. But just seeing all of that, and I like that Bobo had the routes with anticipation. I'm going to gush a little bit here, okay? Here's a little story for you. So I sat down with Brock Vandegrift a few weeks ago, and by the way, that story is coming out on Sunday and on SaturdayDownSouth.com. Shameless plug. I asked him the play that he envisions when he closes his eyes. Like, Will, I'm sure you have this. A lot of people have this who are past their athletic prime, right? When you're daydreaming, you're thinking to yourself of doing something athletic you've done in your life. What's the thing that you envision? And his answer was so interesting to me. Like, it wasn't some like running over a dude in high school or like talking about, like a touchdown pass I made in garbage time or something like that, because that's really where all of his reps have come. He brought up a play that Carson Beck made. Tennessee game last year, 3rd and 12. Georgia is up 17-7, and they're on their own 27-yard line, 5 minutes left in the first half. If they punt the ball, Tennessee gets it back, maybe gets the crowd back into it. They need to pick up this 3rd and 12. Huge point in this game. And it's a perfect back shoulder throw to Dylan Bell downfield on the right side.
Dylan
Bell's so freaking good. I need to keep bringing up Dylan Bell more and more when I talk about Georgia's offense and how excited I am in it, because I think the possibilities that Bobo has with him are very much endless. But that play, bringing that up, at the time I thought to myself, Bobo's got this thing figured out. That used to be a play that was like Georgia's only go-to to be able to move the sticks. And now it's like this unbelievable weapon that's just a part of their offense and what they're capable of doing with a quarterback as confident as Carson Beck is. And I don't know that he makes that throw earlier in the season. So those are very positive things for me to say about Mike Bobo. I approve of this first selection for you coming second off of the board overall.
And I just want to say this. Here's a sentence for Georgia fans. If I ever say anything mean about you during the year, I want you to really lock into this one, because I've never thought to myself, wow, I'm as wrong as I am right now. Georgia hiring Mike Bobo and adding James Coley to it actually makes me feel better about this, because I think Coley is going to elevate their wide receiver room. Yep. How insane of a sentence is that? Because the receivers objectively were not that good last year. Lad's lad. He's himself. He's a lad, right? But the two transfer guys were okay, but when they needed to be there in the SEC championship game, they were not there, and they are not doing a great job of developing wide receivers. I talked about this when Coley was hired. That was the guy that brought in, the two NFL guys. That was the guy that brought in these freaks that played at Georgia. Not as much my guy in blanking on LSU. What's up?
Robert Thomas was literally injured, so that's why he wasn't there in the SEC championship. But
you know what? If he had that dog in him, all right, Ladd was injured too. But where was he?
Brock was hurt. A lot of guys were hurt in that game. So some are saying.
I'm not gonna shame anyone for being injured, but anyway. So yeah, I think James Coley is actually gonna elevate this team. Funny as that is. On to the next one. So I could play some mind games here, Connor. I could take who I think you want, but I'm gonna stay with a guy who I did have late last year, and I almost got ahead of myself because this guy was pulled up when I said I got this guy late last year. I didn't want to blow the lead here, but Charlie Weiss Jr. I think that Charlie Weiss Jr. is a guy, and that was my value pick last year. I got him like last, coming on for the first 11-win season in Ole Miss history, adding all the transfer portal guys, getting to a point where we have the talent, we have the offensive line, we have the backs, getting guys from all over the country to come in and play for you, getting Jackson Dart back, you know what I'm saying, having that continuity, right? So we look at continuity from the offensive coordinator standpoint, continuity from the quarterback standpoint. Talent's always been the question in Ole Miss. Now the talent's there, right? You're talking about a team that only, okay, well, Nick Saban's not here as well. So what is your roadblocks? You're starting to see your roadblocks start to get removed, right? And so Ole Miss can be a version of LSU last year where I'm not, having a bad defense is helpful for me in this draft. I don't care how your defense is, right? So your offense, I think he's been able to be multiple, as Coach O would say. He's been able to, run lots of different formations, different looks, do some trickeration. I think now he has the chess pieces to even level up from last year, and the roadblocks aren't there in the same way.
I like this pick. I am at fifth on my big board. On my big board. So was hoping to be able to get him mid-round type pick. But I have no issue with that whatsoever. You're exactly right. And it's a little bit difficult because I do think Lane has obviously still a pretty heavy influence on the offense, whether he admits it or not. I do think he empowers Charlie Weiss Jr. And there's a reason why he has had him as his OC at two different schools and why he hired him so young too, in his mid-20s when he did that at FAU. It is a little bit tough though when you think about like Lebby leaving Ole Miss to have total autonomy on that side of the ball at Oklahoma, like how much of the control is there. I still think there's a good amount of it, but he in my opinion, is running an offense where if you're one of these teams that has just a terrible offense, you're one of those fan bases. Watching Ole Miss on offense will just make you mad. It will. As the chicks would say, wide open spaces. That's what it's all about. Okay. Ole Miss is unofficially a top 5 team in America when it comes to dudes running wide open downfield. That is what they do. Like, it's not that they don't have guys that can make the contested catches. Trey Harris did that a lot last year, probably the catch of the year in the SEC last year. Dayton Wade did some of that as well. He's off to the NFL. But their play calling, how much of it is Lane, how much of it is Charlie Weiss Jr., to have just an uncovered receiver for Dart, it just happens. It happens to the point where if I'm that offensively starved fan base, I'm just getting angrier and angrier watching them operate. Like, can you imagine being an Iowa fan and you're turning off some 11 o'clock game after watching your team lose 10-7, where you cheered loudest for your punter, and then you flip on Ole Miss, maybe it's 3:30 on CBS, 3:30 on SEC Network, whatever it is, and you watch Jackson Dart hit Caden Prescorn just streaking down the middle of the field because an entire defense forgot to cover the tight end. Like, can you imagine going through? I don't recommend it. That's torture, in my opinion. I think Charlie Weiss Jr. is very good at his job, and I should probably be putting a little bit more respect on his name. Trivia question for you. Over under 31 years old for Charlie Weiss Jr.
Oh, man. The way you asked that made me think it's under.
You're smart. You get me. It's under. It's slightly under.
The 30. Months are just ticking down for me, Connor. 29 and a half. It's just...
Well, 30 is not so bad, man. It's not so bad. You get
that's going to be... The way you are with Sean McVay, that's going to be me with Charlie Weiss Jr. in a couple of years.
Yeah. No, it's... Look, a lot of the guys that are on this list are right in my age demo. And that's... I'm embracing it. I'm not running from it. I'm not trying to be terrified. Charlie Weiss Jr. is significantly younger than me. He's 3 years. Yeah, he's like 3 years younger than me. That's a weird thing to be like, oh yeah, I was a senior in high school when he would have been a freshman. That makes me throw up in my mouth. I hate that. Okay. All right, let's move on. Good pick though. Good pick overall.
I can't wait for this next one. Because he's sitting there.
I'm not taking Joe Sloan. I'm not taking Joe Sloan.
Not what I'm talking about.
I know who you're talking about. It's not Joe Sloan. Gosh, do I do this? No, I'm going to wait. Okay. I'm gonna wait unless you. I'm gonna be very upset if you take him, but I'll roll the dice. I'm going with Colin Klein at A&M.
Okay.
I love Colin Klein. This is someone who, like last year at Kansas State, there were a lot of people talking about what's this offense going to look like without Deuce Vaughn, guy that was just all over the record books, historically great player, a little mighty mouse, Darren Sproles 2.0, whatever you want to call him. He's great. Then they got better by 5 points a game and had a top 10 offense in America and were really, really good. And then also went from being in the bottom of the country, bottom half of the country, I should say, in third down conversion percentage. They finished 11th in that last year. He left his alma mater. He spent 13 of the last 15 years there as a player, a GA, an assistant, a higher ranking assistant. And he did that because A&M was the opportunity that he could not turn down. And that's the thing that I'll say to anyone who craps on A&M and, as a program as a whole, all those different things. The talent pool to work with is still so attractive for some of these guys. And Colin Klein is in a position where he's been trying to be a head coach at the college level for a while. And he's been grinding away for the last decade plus trying to do that. He knows the hurdles at Kansas State because he is the type of guy that they recruited. People forget, they weren't even sure he was going to be a quarterback when he first started college at Kansas State.
Because he's too big.
Yeah,
he's too strong.
I think he was more of like a super back, like an H-back, if I remember correctly. And then obviously he turns into a player that was unbelievably good and was third.
That's like the Lamar Jackson's too fast. You can't play quarterback. It's like maybe you could use that at that position. Hold on.
Maybe we'd put the ball in his hands instead of out of it.
Make them tackle him, which they cannot.
Yes. Great thought. Colin Klein, he runs the type of offense that Connor Wigman ran in high school. Or there's at least a lot of similarities to it. You're going to spread things out. You're going to run a lot of up-tempo stuff. You're going to have quarterback design runs. It's a little bit more run heavy probably than what some A&M fans are used to. I mean, depending on which era of A&M you're looking at, but I think that might be what A&M's personnel needs in year one. I think that he's just a rising star, possibly my favorite assistant hire of the entire offseason. I think he's that good, and that's why I'm okay with him as my second guy, fourth overall off the board.
Man, I'm furious at this pick because I was so locked into getting him next. I love him. I genuinely think he is probably, if I had to rank him overall, I would have ranked him like number 2, just in terms of intelligence. I think that he is the only question is, A&M starting over, right? But to your point, he has a good quarterback, which, some people on this list that are great offensive minds, we'll get to that in a second, do not have. And so point being, I think that, that's why I just sighed whenever you said they were in the same offense. Like that pick is awesome. Like that guy is going to work out. And this was I've been very consistent about what I want to see out of these new head coaches. For A&M, it was always, okay, you have more money than God at A&M, and you don't need to hire a defensive coordinator. Like you need to hire one, but anyone is going to come pray at your altar the way they used to with Brian Kelly because you can get them to the next level. So you don't need to spend on that defensive coordinator. So what you need to do is take the massive budget that you were going to spend on 2 coordinators, cut it into 3/4 and 1/4, and take the 3/4 and go buy a king of offense. And Colin Klein is a king of offense. He is exactly the type of hire. And when you guys hear me dump it on different coordinators, this is what I would do with money. If I was in any kind of decision-making power, get a guy who has this connection, has the ability, has done it, has, like you said, he's been player-proof. He's been scheme-proof. He's been a player. He can connect with quarterbacks, but he can also connect with H-backs. He can also connect with tight ends. He's not looking up at him going, oh, he's going, okay, I've been there with you. So in terms of a dude, I wish I would have gotten him earlier now.
Yeah, there was definitely an internal debate because I don't think I would have gotten him on coming back around. And I definitely wanted to be all in on the Colin Klein bandwagon because I feel like I've been banging that drum throughout this offseason. I don't know if we know the financials of his raise. I want to say he was making $825K at Kansas State, and he will make significantly more at A&M. I don't know if there's if those terms have come out just yet, but I'd be stunned if it wasn't at least double. If he's not making at least 1.5. Something like that, probably closer to 2. That would be a big surprise because that's the type of guy that you can go out and poach. And Lord knows he's had other opportunities to leave his alma mater. And waited for the right one, and I think that A&M opportunity will be the right one for him. So,
Yeah.
okay, so far we've got Kirby Moore is off the board, Mike Bobo is off the board, Charlie Weiss Jr. and Colin Klein. Every other, so we've got, I guess not all. Yeah, there's a significant amount of coordinators still available. Who is your third pick?
Now I got to do it, Connor. No, I got to do it because I can't let you do it this late. I got to take Bobby Patrino.
You suck.
See, you could have just taken Bobby Patrino and I could have gotten Klein and we would have both been happy, but no, I got to root for Bobby Patrino. Here's the situation, right? This is not the good human draft. Okay? This is not the, maybe I would like to get a beer with Bobby Patrino. This is not the Hoosier Homie. This is the offensive mind draft. And this is a guy who, if he were a little bit better off the field, would certainly be a head coach. Was a head coach. Has left so many players hanging that, you can't count him. But he is in a situation now where if you're Sam Pittman, you don't have the meddling ability that Jimbo Fisher even has. Like, not dumping on our guy Sam, but like Jimbo has his own offense. Sam doesn't. He doesn't want to go in there and go fight with coordinators.
Will, Arkansas fans wanted Sam Pittman to have meddling ability last year with Dan Enos, and he did not have enough of the meddling ability.
Literally.
That would have been an asset. That's a situation where you wish your head coach had more meddling ability. Yeah,
exactly. And like that's exactly what I'm thinking is that like I want Bobby Patrino to have autonomy, and I think we both agreed he did pretty well last year.
Yep.
But the parts of him not doing well pretty much just dealt with A&M being a bleep show. So like it really didn't have much to do with him, and he didn't really have autonomy. And Jimbo was like hanging on to the sinking ship and trying to fix things himself. So I think that even if Sam Pittman ends up in that situation, there's really just not much he can do to Bobby Petrino to stop him because his understanding of offense is not quite what Petrino's is. And it's going to be obvious and not count against Patrino if he does that. So, yeah, I think that Patrino has, we've talked about Lamar Jackson. We did all this last year. I've already talked about him today, unrelatedly. And, yeah, I think that he has, he's done it with Ryan Mallett. He's done it with different types of quarterbacks. I think that he is one of the best offensive minds, in the sport. And when you talk about guys in the SEC that have won recent Heismans, there's really not another guy out here that 2016 is pretty much what it gets. So, yeah, I think that, he can adapt to any environment. And now I'm blanking on another guy's name. Our boy with the Rec Specs.
You're talking about Lenore Sellers, who is at South Carolina.
Oh, duh. Right. So who's Arkansas's quarterback?
That's a great question, Will. It is looking like Boise State transfer Taylon Green is going to be the guy.
There we go. Okay.
If I had to bet, I don't know that there are very high expectations. That's my only concern with Robert Patrick Patrino. Maybe why he did not go 1-1 for me last year. Although I think coordinator depth in the SEC is just better this year. Yep. So maybe that's probably got something to do with it. So there is the possibility that by the end of the season, we're like, hey, coach not in good standing once again, similar to what we were talking about last year with A&M. But as I always said, A&M got better. A&M got better offensively. They didn't finish in the top 100 in the previous year, Will. And they were a top 25 offense nationally. They were top 5 offense in the SEC this past season. Like, he made that group better. They had 3 different quarterbacks.
And they were on, like a quarterback they didn't plan on seeing the field by the end of the year. Like, it was like, okay, well, we got Wigman, Johnson, okay, boom. Like, they were like, you're right. And that's like where the hater needs to be put aside because it's like, look at what they're working with in the situation and the fact that that guy was not supposed to see the field. He's still running over LSU and I'm freaking out and I'm in like Prague. Like, what is going on? Why are we not putting this team away? It's 9 p.m.
I'm a Jalen Henderson respecter.
Literally, bro.
Love
so anyone better than that, not to dump on the kid, but he was a third stringer. Like any starting day one quarterback is going to be better because A&M was clearly cursed last year. So yeah, that's my take.
I like this a lot. Look, this is difficult for me. I did not want to look up at this board and see Robert Patrick Patrino going to somebody else, but I guess I was okay with it because you know what, I like my top 2. I have my top 2 on my board. You have my 3 through 5 on my board right now. So I'm going to go down to 6 on my board. And this is going to come off a little bit more rogue. Seth Littrell. Seth Littrell is my next pick. This could get me in some trouble. I'm admitting that. This man is 2024 Mike Bobo, Will.
Okay.
Last year, he returned to his alma mater as an analyst after being fired. This year, he gets promoted to OC to work with a new talented starting quarterback. externally, there's an assumption that he is going to be a downgrade. Internally, at least among the fan base, there is significant confidence that he's going to be much better than people realize. We're going to talk about that more with Chris Plank. Littrell is someone who was a very head-scratching firing at North Texas. He spent 7 years there. He lasted 7 years at what's maybe not even a top 10 job in the state of Texas. Let's go through the top 10 jobs in the state of Texas. Texas A&M, TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor, Houston, SMU, UTSA, Texas State, probably a good program on the rise. Yeah. Love the quarterback situation that they continue to build up there. Then Rice, maybe, then North Texas. You kind of get into a little bit of a debate for that 10th spot. Point stands. Maybe not a top 10 job in the state of Texas. So think about this, Will.
This has been far too hinged so far. So I love this.
In his last season there, they averaged 34 points per game. Okay. They averaged at least 30 points in 5 of his 7 seasons there. They were doing really good things offensively. I remember thinking his firing at the time was weird. And it's even weirder to look back now when you consider that they were 6-2 in Conference USA play. They made it to a Conference USA championship that year. I'm assuming that losing to UTSA twice that year probably played a part in that. Not sure, whatever the case. I think Seth Littrell is going to be better than people realize. I'm saying that now. And it's not just, oh, he's got the familiarity. He's back at his alma mater. You know, he's in his comfort zone, whatever. Mm-hmm. I think they have good talent to work with. And I know the 7.5 wins is going to scare a lot of people off talking about Oklahoma in the preseason. But they got some dudes in the passing game. And they are going to be able to throw the football. I think as long as Jackson Arnold can cut down on some of those mistakes, a very big if, obviously, and so much of that is based on the bowl game. But I like Seth Littrell, and I think SEC fans are going to get to know this guy very soon.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like we talked about, and you kind of converted me to the take of Oklahoma is secretly an offensive team. I love that. I think they were great. Obviously, some changes, right? Like, but when you think about, you know, what makes Oklahoma go, even historically, it's like this is a team that wants to get out and run on you, wants to get downfield vertically, and I think that that's one thing that Venables has understood. It's kind of ironic that that's what he's been best at. Like we were talking about, it's like you kind of kept the Lincoln Riley points per game production. You just had some weird stuff kind of go wrong on you. Like it really wasn't like the defense got better too. Like last year's Oklahoma team was better than almost every Lincoln Riley team in terms of things you could measure, but they just lost some weird games. So like, yeah, I think that, you know, a guy like that, especially you're talking about kind of like under the radar, younger guys that don't get enough credit. That's one of those like sneaky picks that could turn out really well.
Seth Littrell also got to Indiana right after I stopped covering the team because he got there for Kevin Wilson's first year. He was Kevin Wilson's first OC at Indiana and then spent a few years with him, had some good offenses, had some not as good offenses, but is like one of those guys that's just been at basketball schools running offenses in the past. And that doesn't include North Texas. Again, maybe not even a top 10 job in the state, but UNC, Arizona, Indiana, like those are the places where he's been running offenses, not necessarily with total autonomy, but very interested to see what it looks like with full control at Oklahoma with that talent available. I think he's going to be one of those guys that by the end of the year, we will look at him in a much different way than the way that he's being talked about right now.
Absolutely. So this will be our last pick, right? Overall?
No, you are picking your 4th pick. You
still
yes,
gotcha.
This will be your first. This will be the 4th pick and the 7th pick overall.
You know what Lil Wayne said? Quick draw McGraw. I went to art school. All right, so I don't do math here. Okay, so good. Yes, correct. All right, now this is, you know what? I have messed around for long enough here. I think I'm going to go ahead and take my guy, Joe Sloan.
There you go.
I genuinely believe in my heart of hearts that Joe Sloan was the reason behind LSU's offensive success last year. And that being from a guy who took Denbrock first overall. And will gladly take credit for thinking that was a good idea, but it was more of taking the LSU offense. You know, if you looked inside the building and if you looked at recruits and also fans, Mike Denbrock gets hired and goes to Notre Dame, nobody decommits.
Yeah.
Think about how weird that is. Okay, when your OC, he's in the what's it called? The Broyles Award finalist, he's all this stuff. Nobody decommits. We have all these quarterbacks lined up to play. Nobody says, oh, Mike Denbrock's not here. I'm going to hang it up and at least open my recruitment. Furthermore, LSU lands Bryce Underwood after that. LSU lands all these guys in the next cycle because it was Joe Sloan that was talking to him the whole time, right? And so I think that Joe Sloan is another example of a guy, kind of like some of these guys you talked about, right? He was at La Tech for a long time. He was just kind of ducked off by himself. You know, he was like a Skip Holtz guy, and he has this crazy resume where he just stayed at one school forever, was there like, you know, building them up. And he finally like gets over to LSU, and actually, and this is not copium, I promise, Denbrock leaving was the biggest blessing in disguise for LSU, because if Denbrock stays, there is a 0.0% chance they're able to keep both Joe Sloan and Cortez Hankton. You could take that to the bank. And because both of those guys got raises, both of those guys got title changes. Now Joe Sloan has play calling duties. That was enough to keep them in Baton Rouge. And so in my mind, like, keeping Denbrock, losing Joe Sloan, and potentially the quarterbacks, who, like I said, they were committed to somebody, right? So we know it wasn't Denbrock. If Sloan leaves, and given, you know, what all the recruits have said, he was the one really in charge of that quarterback room because he's a former QB coach. He's a former QB. He's the guy who talks. He's the quarterback whisperer behind Jaden Daniels, right? And he's been there both years, like that type of stuff. So I think that this is going to be a very different LSU offense, obviously, because there's one Jaden Daniels walking around, you know what I'm saying? But the thing that makes me feel like this is a great pick, especially late, is LSU's offensive line. I've talked about it ad nauseum, you know, talking about the young guys they got coming in, the running backs, talking about the receivers that while they're replacing some guys, okay, I'll not to do like a whole positional breakdown of LSU, but let's just say there's two things that make me excited, right? The offensive line and the tight ends. We talked about how Mason Taylor was the one tight end on the roster when Brian Kelly got here. You look up and down draft boards, that's offensive line and tight end are the two positions that Brian Kelly has produced over and over and over, going way back, right? And so they didn't have any tight ends when he got here. Well, now these monsters that he's recruited have started to get bigger and more involved. And this offense, I think, is going to look totally different from last year. It's going to be a lot heavier. It's going to be a lot bigger. It's going to be a lot more push you forward versus we're going to build a wall around Jaden Daniels and let him do whatever he wants for like 5-6 seconds, and that's going to work. It is going to be a lot more of like, okay, we're going to punch you in the mouth over and over and over again. And I think it's going to be super fun to see that, especially with a guy like Nussmeier who can throw up jump balls to the they have fast receivers and huge tight ends. And I think that's a great balance for a guy who can be a little bit of a gunslinger.
The only thing I'd be worried about is if things feel underwhelming at any point. Brian Kelly has typically not been the best at handling that. And he's very blunt, very blunt.
Mm-hmm.
Coming off of a year in which you have the best offense in college football, you got a Heisman Trophy winner, you're relying on a lot of new pieces. Now, again, when you have the foundation that LSU does on the offensive line, that's different than it is at a lot of other places. Fully acknowledge that. I think the receiver position, they're going to be perfectly fine. I do like the possibility of Kyron Lacey stepping into that big time role. You get a transfer from Liberty as well. Like, you should feel good about the pass catchers if you're LSU. But is the drop off to the point where all of a sudden it's the OC's fault and nobody else? Is it Joe Sloan and coming back on him and, oh my God, what I wouldn't do for Mike Denbrock? That's the only thing that prevented me from wanting to pick him even higher. I wasn't going to take him this early. He wasn't on my board because I was assuming that you were going to take him early. I thought you'd take him before now, but we talked about this a lot. We were texting about this back when I think it was first even reported that Denbrock could be on the move. And you're like, no, I'm totally fine with this. In ways that, look, I know Will might to some sound like, oh, Will's just like this big LSU homer and he's always going to do the spin zone. Like, Will will tell it like he sees it when it comes to LSU's issues on either side of the ball. And this one was not one that you were particularly
Search my Twitter for Matt House if you think I'm a homer.
It's true. Or don't. Problematic tweets in there. We don't want to dig those up. We don't want to get Will canceled. But yes, Joe Sloan has a lot of questions, but I do think, again, a lot of internal optimism. And that's a big thing. We'll be interested to see if that conversation changes if things go south at any point this year for LSU.
Well, and you hit on something interesting, too, which is that Sloan's a younger guy. And the guys that Kelly dumps on are younger guys. So, like, we didn't hear a lot of that about Denbrock, even though his offense in 22 was pretty stale, right? Then in 23, Jaden went, you know what? Call these stale plays. I'm going to get out there and do my thing anyway. But Joe Sloan, like, he didn't have this long relationship like he did with Denbrock, who still left, by the way. So we don't know how it was behind closed doors. So you're right. That's a really good call out because the young guys are the ones that Brian Kelly will bully. We know that.
Kelly's bluntness in a post-game presser is second to none. It really is. And there's like, I can close my eyes and being like, yeah, Joe Sloan, we're going to have to figure out what he's doing, calling some of these plays. Like maybe if they lose one of those games against a Southern, a USC or UCLA or something like that, and then that changes the conversation. Okay. I've got 2 picks left. You know what? I think I can get, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a guy that I don't think you will take. I'm going with Dowell Loggins. Let's go Dowell Loggins here.
Okay, so he was one of the 3. I started to make a joke about him, actually, and then I started dumping on Mike Denbrock. So he's one of the 3 that stuck around, and I'm, to be honest, not sure how he did. How did he do last year?
Here's the thing. If you're just looking at the record, if you are just, even some of the raw numbers aren't great. They're not going to be promotion type stuff. If you watch this South Carolina team, where I will defend Dowell Loggins, it is super hard to scheme when your offensive line blows chunks. Your lead running back is a D2 transfer not named Cody Schrader. And your most established offensive player, I'd argue at that point, was Juice Wells, at least in terms of how he's valued at his position. And that guy wasn't on the field for the vast majority of the season. Yeah, that's tough. That's a really tough thing to have to deal with. And obviously you're paid well to deal with those circumstances. I will tell anyone that didn't watch South Carolina that this group was better than it could have been because of Loggins, right? They were not bad because of him. And now it's not to say that he had a perfect approval rating. And there are moments where it was frustrating. You're like, hey, you've got to get quicker releases. You've got to be able to deal with this bad offensive line better. But the job that he did with Spencer Rattler, very well documented. Something that I'm pretty passionate about, and the player that Rattler became doesn't mean that he's going to have great, unbelievable NFL success, but I just think that he got better year to year. And the transformation with Xavier Legette, that guy put in the work in the offseason. Like those 2 were the South Carolina offense. I want to see what it looks like for South Carolina when they have more possibilities. Not to say that they're going to be better at the quarterback position. I don't think it's going to be an upgrade because Spencer Rattler was that good. But I want to see what it looks like with an offensive line in a ground game that just has to be better. It simply has to be, and I think it will be with Sean Elliott on board, and he's going to help with that. But just to me, at the game's most important position, the eye test with Rattler, that suggested that Loggins knows what he's doing when it comes to developing quarterbacks. And I'm curious what it's going to look like with your boy, Rex Specs enthusiast, not Horace Grant, but Lenore Sellers, and then Robbie Ashford, the project of all projects that we've been talking about for a long time.
2 years away from 2 years away.
I know, right? even though I'm admittedly terrified of like the non-Nick Harbor pass catching options.
That guy.
He could be
play
fun
him
to
at
watch.
Quarterback.
He could
play him at quarterback.
It could get to that. You just never know with the way that things could play out this year. I do think that Dowell Loggins is good at his job. And so it might look like I'm a bit too high on him because he's not just like the last guy on the board here, but I think real ones know. Real ones know who watch South Carolina, and I think you'd still rather have Dowell Loggins over Marcus Satterfield. I mean, goodness gracious, Nebraska's offense. I don't know how many times I had to tell Nebraska fans, like, you did not get an upgrade by getting Marcus Satterfield. You did not. And they saw by the end of the year how bad it was with him. So, Loggins my 4th pick.
Well, man, after all the Homer accusations I got, it is just curious to me that one Nick Sheridan is still sitting here on the board. After I said, why do they have all these coordinators? I don't know what's going on here. You had so many opportunities to pick this guy that you thought was a good hire, and he's still on the board. So guess where I'm going?
Okay.
I think his offense is going to be good. I've said it from the beginning. I think it's pretty fundamentally DeBoer's offense, but I think it's more smart. As I texted you the other day, it's about, hate to give the University of Florida strays, just kidding, but Florida is good at recruiting. Alabama is good at coaching. If they could just combine them into some type of a megazord, they would have the perfect program, right? Alabama has some good coaches. They have some really good X's and O's coaches, right? And so is picking Nick Sheridan a little bit like Charlie Weiss in that, I'm ultimately hitching my wagon to the head coach? Yes, and I'm totally fine with that. I think that at the end of the day, Alabama's offense is going to be their selling point. I think that if you look at Washington and what they were able to do, how they're able to protect their quarterback that was unprotectable for his first 4 years of his college career. If you look at how, and I know their offensive line coach is gone, trust me, but I think that, in this year, value like that, you just can't turn down. When you think about, they have Jalen Bobo returning, they have a guy who had bad offensive line, had not great receivers, had Jermaine Burton as his wide receiver 1, and was still out there pushing dudes around. So I never thought Tommy Rees was a good coach. I want to be clear. I think they had a lot of talent in Nick Saban. I think that offensively, the DeBoer Sheridan combination is better than what they had last year. And last year, their offense was solid despite all the problems they had. I think that that was a pick that I felt good about last year, and I think it's going to be even better this year getting them later.
I had Sheridan as next up on my board.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, I said the philosophy behind the hire was what I supported.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that Nick Sheridan is going to be some 2 or 3 year guy that goes on to do bigger and better things. I don't know that. Okay, not sitting here pretending I do, but I do like, based on the way that Ryan Grubb was held in such high regard, based on everything that he said about running an offense with a Kalen DeBoer coach team, I do think Sheridan's going to get a lot of control. I don't know.
Let me ask you, let me pause you right there. If Ryan Grubb was still here, where would you have ranked him?
I think I would have had Grubb at 1.
Right.
I think I would have had Grubb at 1. Yep. Yeah, I would have. I would have taken him over Kirby Moore. I would have taken him over Bobo. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Look, this can go in a lot of different ways, and I think how a coach treats you in terms of extensions, in terms of letting you go for another job, and not necessarily giving you that raise. That's how you kind of read these things more so than what you say about someone in a press conference. But you look at the resume, and it's kind of baffling to think that Nick Sheridan, the last time he was running an offense, it was one of the worst 10 offenses in college football at Indiana in 2021. It was terrible.
The cradle of coaches, Indiana. They've been saying it. Many
people are saying it. Yes, they are. Seth Littrell as well. 2020 offense was good. It was really good. How much of that in 2021, that fall off, was related to the Penix injury? I don't know, because look, he got hurt the year before too. So Sheridan only has this job because Ryan Grubb said no to it. Let's call it what it is. You could say the same thing about Tommy Rees last year, though. He only had that job as Alabama OC because Ryan Grubb said no to it.
This man is enemy number 1 in Alabama. He just keeps almost telling them yes. It's not that he tells them no. He's like, I'll think about it. Nah.
It's as I said, it's Ben with the accounting firm from Parks and Rec. It's the same exact thing. Yeah. Rees, his approval rating at Bama. At times, we wondered if he'd make it to November. At times, we wondered if this was one of the more drastic midseason turnarounds that we've seen in recent memory. I think he finished probably somewhere in the middle. He's now with the Browns. He wasn't retained by the new staff, but I do wonder if he would have been retained if DeBoer knew that Grubb wasn't coming to Bama. The timing of that didn't really line up. But I guess that's kind of beside the point as we talk about Sheridan. The point is that I think Sheridan is, as you mentioned, he's set up for success probably more than the last time that he was an OC. That I feel very good about. The interior of the Bama offensive line should be good, should be really good, because Booker is excellent. The decorated Washington transfer, Parker Brailsford, he's coming in at center. He's the highest graded returning interior offensive lineman according to PFF. You're going to have a guy that can snap the football, so that's an upgrade. That's good for Bama. Easier to run the offense when you can snap the football, I hear. But yeah, I mentioned before how I do like that Sheridan is so well liked by quarterbacks that have played for him, like a Josh Dobbs, like a Peyton Ramsey, Michael Penix, who followed him at 3 different places, including the Tennessee thing. So I'm okay with him coming off the board. I wasn't going to take him any sooner than this. He was going to be my last pick, or he wasn't going to get picked. So I'm okay with you doing this. I'm surprised that you ended up with him and not me.
Yes, and let me say this too. This is kind of like when you take Anthony Davis's backup in fantasy to me. All right.
Sure.
If this guy gets fired at the end of the year, okay, I'm almost planning for it because DeBoer did not have a full cycle to find his guy. Okay. So he is perfectly set up to be year 1 guy that takes the blame and gets fired. Okay.
That's true.
I'm aware of that. But that guy can still lead a top 40 offense. And in the SEC, that's not always a guarantee, especially, with the turnover and everything. So I'm aware that it is likely this guy only lasts 1 year for the simple fact that DeBoer will have lots of money, will have a wide net, and everybody wants to coach for him and for Alabama. And this might be a mid-plus or a good offense. And DeBoer can go out and say, okay, I'm going to go snag somebody who's like a Colin Klein type guy. But this, to be clear, Sheridan getting fired or even demoted does not change this pick to me, because I'm only picking him here because of the value. And if Ryan Grubb were there, he would not be here this late.
Yes, I agree. I think those are all perfectly fine points. Yeah, I have no problem with that. All right, let's round this out. I went a little bit back and forth, thought about Bush Hamdan, new Kentucky offensive coordinator. Let's go with Joey Halzle instead. Let's go with Joey Halzle, somebody who has a lot of questions. And I'm not taking this because of what he's accomplished. I'm taking this because of what I think he's going to do. Those are two different things. It's a little bit difficult with Tennessee because obviously this is Josh Heupel's offense. Okay, we talk about it in that way for a reason, because of his offensive acumen. We know that he's got a big hand in this, but he does still delegate play calling duties, which I think is a strength of Josh Heupel to be willing to do that. And let's not forget, friend of the program, Alex Golesh, he parlayed those play calling duties into a really solid group of 5 job that he is already doing great things with. Hopefully we're going to get him back on the show very soon. I am taking Joey Halzle as a projection that by this time next year, we will be talking about this Tennessee offense bouncing back, getting back to perhaps those top 8 levels nationally, having a guy in Nico Iamaleava, still crushing the pronunciation of that one, still doing great things. I shouldn't say still, starting to do great things. I think that is very much on the table for him. And because I am so high on this Tennessee offense, I believe that Halzle will be put in spots to succeed in ways that, look, at times last year, you saw it, I saw it, every Tennessee fan that showed up for games saw it. That offense was limited. It just was. And you can't say Joe Milton can make every single throw in the field if your offense is limited. I just didn't think that was necessarily the case. If I'm going to talk about Dowell Loggins having a very limited amount of things that he can do with his offense in South Carolina because of their deficiencies, I should probably do the same when it comes to Tennessee. But again, this is not about what he has accomplished. It is about what I think he is going to do. And it's a little bit more of like I'm buying stock in him. So let's round this out with Joey Halzle, and someone that I think will be talked about with a little bit more of like a, look, this guy doesn't totally suck. We miss Alex Golesh so much. I think Tennessee fans will get on board with that after the 2024 season.
Yeah, the biggest criticism of our original list is that we did not take this guy last year. And honestly, I'm going to go back and defend that, because
I'm fine with that. Yep.
There's a reason. You could talk about some of the guys that we took, but at the end of the day, the thing, and I was actually between him and Charlie Weiss Jr. last year, and I thought to myself, I would trust Lane, a little bit. And not to say, okay, Tennessee had a bad offensive year, but for Josh Heupel, who is, this is his first team that wasn't elite at offense. So for him, that's bad. And it happened to happen with this guy on the staff. Now, that being said, Joe Milton versus Iamaleava, that's completely different. Because you can call all the right plays. You can do the right checks. You can have the right personnel. And if Joe Milton has just decided to stand in there like a statue, it does not matter. And that's what I think happened to them last year. So as much as I want to say I don't regret not taking him, I do love this pick here. I think I have too many of this type of guy already, which is why I kind of had to X him out early, because I was like, I can't just have a bunch of like head coach dependent guys. And then I look like that jerk who just takes like BPA in fantasy and is just like, I'm cooking you. It's like, oh yeah, dude, you auto drafted. Congrats. Like, so like, but see, like you took some more risks early than I did. So like, I think that like, you could do that, and I'm kind of taking the safe route. So yeah, I'm with you. Being near Josh Heupel is the best thing that you can be. And this guy also looks like he could have wrote for SDS circa 2015.
Probably did. Yeah. I don't think I remember seeing him in the offices down here, but I don't know. There's a lot of people coming in and out.
He's got the haircut, the beard. Yeah, but I do think Tennessee's offense is going to be awesome. And you've heard the positive things that I said about, them this offseason. So yeah, I love the pick. He just doesn't fit with my guys I got in the building already.
Yeah, I have the riskier board. You're right. Looking back on this, and here's a recap of this. My picks were Kirby Moore, Klein, Seth Littrell, Dowell Loggins, Joey Halsley. Yours were Mike Bobo, Charlie Weiss Jr., Bobby Patrino, Joe Sloan, Nick Sheridan. You have the higher floor of, like, if 4 of those 5 end up with top 20 offenses, with maybe the lone exception being Robert Patrick Patrino at Arkansas, if 4 of those 5 guys are owning top 20 offenses at season's end, it will not surprise me. Whereas I took a little bit more of like the guys that I think are going to be an upgrade over last year, and what exactly does that look like? Although, who knows? Kirby Moore is competing against himself. Klein is competing against Robert Patrick Patrino. I don't want to default to you too early, but I do like your board. I really do. And I like, it's tough when I got to get that deep into my board. We're very much, I feel like, on the same wavelength with this draft.
Yeah. But to be fair, I do think the pick of this draft is Colin Klein. I wish I would have taken him earlier. Okay. I have one more, right?
No, that's it. That's
it. Okay, good. Okay,
you were like one behind this, the one off.
You're exactly right, because I did not know who I was taking next. Amazing. I was about to just throw a dart at the board, just like I did last year.
Who are you going to take next if you had one?
Yeah, we don't need to. Okay, you know what? I'll just tell you. I was going to take Derek Nix, because you could fool me twice. I'm not smart. But yeah, I will just say, like, Auburn can't continue to be bad at offense. It's like when Trey Murphy got hurt for the Pelicans, I was like, this guy can shoot the basketball. There's no reason to yell at him on Twitter. He's going to figure it out. That's how I feel about like the whole operation at Auburn. They have so many smart people in the building. Hugh Freeze is not going to be trash at offense 2 years in a row, I don't think. I didn't think it was going to be 1, but 2 for sure, no. So, yeah.
Yeah, Nick's never being a play caller, though, is, for all of that time he spent at Ole Miss, is a little bit tougher to get on board with. And it's like, all right, how much involvement is he actually going to have compared to Hugh Freeze? That's apparently taking back primary play calling duties, and then you're relying on perhaps Peyton Thorne to do your bidding for you. Okay, it's
not a guy you want doing bidding. Wait, what's up?
Guys, there's a reason why we cut this off at 10. We don't need to pick all 16 in the SEC. We did not need to do that. I feel good about where we ended this thing.
Okay, let me ask you this. Who's the Halsley this year? Like, who's the guy that the fan base is going to be mad he's still on the board? I don't see one. I really don't, because Bush Hamden, like, we both thought about him, but it's like, come on. Like, you guys had your guy, and he kind of left. So, I don't know. Like, if you're defending Rob Sale at Florida, good luck.
Look, and someone who doesn't have primary play calling duties, right? With a disappointing offense, I can't really get on board with that one as much. Vandy no longer has Joey Lynch. So yeah,
Tim Beck 2, Electric Boogaloo over at Vandy, because there's the other Tim Beck we always joke about. It's not that Tim Beck; it's a different Tim Beck who I know nothing about. Maybe you do, but I was not going to draft him.
No, that wasn't going to come off the board. And then Sark handling play calling duties. You're kind of like, going to Texas for. I think that we're okay with the 10 that we picked here. I don't think there's a true honorable mention.
Yeah,
I think honorable mention is our fifth picks, basically.
Yep.
All right, so let's do first Thursday of every month. Let's just draft something new. Let's do that.
Cool. I love that.
Yeah, first Thursday every month we will draft something new. Maybe it's uniforms. Now, actually, let's not do uniforms. I'm not much of a uniform guy, but we'll draft receivers. We can draft quarterbacks. We could draft maybe, how about like non-SEC coaches? We can do that.
I messed with the drafts now. Okay, let's do that. Yeah.
Right, first Thursday.
This is one of those, I always joke about us being different but similar. This is one where our thought process of being completely different is just amazing, because we literally approach things so differently when it comes to like a draft, assets, stuff like that. You've seen that in both years. We both just value things differently. And again, last year we both ended up pretty much mid-plus. So it's like there was a better way to do it.
I think mid-plus is kind, Will. I don't know that I'd be calling my draft performance mid-plus. I'm going to give myself a solid B for my draft performance. I'm gonna give you B plus. I think I like yours slightly more than mine. That's
the 2 and 3. They're inexcusable. And that's what I get cooked in for fantasy is I'll get what I think a guy will be and not what he is, because I've hit on like 2 of those guys in my career. I'm like, oh yeah, I saw Jokic coming. This guy's the next Jokic. No, brother, that guy is some random Euro sitter who's never gonna play.
He never is. The Indiana State guy. That's the next Jokic. That's what everybody's saying. Mm-hmm. Sure. All right, let's kick it to Chris Plank. Such a fun conversation with him. I promise by the end of this, you will want to book a trip to Norman this fall to be able to see an Oklahoma game. So here's Chris. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest, a first-time guest. It is Plank Show host and host of about a million other things, Mr. Oklahoma, Chris Plank. Chris, maybe I shouldn't have called you Mr. Oklahoma because on this show that title might have been reserved for a certain late Toby Keith.
Oh, yes.
I know. Let's start there. Do you have a favorite Toby Keith story?
Yeah, the joy he had in all the years run together. I think it was the 13 Sugar Bowl. It was really kind of the first time. So I've been doing sidelines for OU football since 2011. And I kind of got to know Toby Keith a little bit because he's at every game, but you didn't really know him. And I hadn't really known him, I guess I should say. And then we went through that whole season where things weren't going – there's my first we. Things weren't going all that well for Oklahoma. I think Baylor kicked them pretty good on like a Thursday or a Friday night, and you just didn't know where the team was going. And they won their last 3 games. I think Bob Stoops set the all-time wins record that year. And then we played Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and I remember Toby Keith afterwards just as happy as I've ever seen an individual in my life because they'd beaten Big Bad Bama, and this team that had struggled this year finally got a big dub. He was obviously a big softball guy. I've been the voice of the Sooner softball team since 16. Seeing him sing last year and perform at their championship, and it's been kind of weird if this makes sense. I knew he was a country star, right? You knew he's a rock star, but I don't know if you really knew to what level until after he had passed because he was Toby Keith. He was Toby. He was at the games, and you'd say, hey, and he'd know who you are. And that was really cool, but then you didn't realize how many people he had touched and how amazing his music was and how widespread it was, I think, until we had lost him. So he's missed, man. He was a major part of everything that happened around Oklahoma. And, yeah, he truly was Mr. Oklahoma. The water tower in Moore, the home of Toby Keith, it's emblazoned as soon as you start getting into Norman territory. So I miss him a lot. He's a great guy.
We do on this show, we call them Toby Keith games, and that is a how do you like me now game for a coach.
I like it.
You know, and we're going to continue that. I think we need to. It's just you kind of hear it and you're like, all right, you know, when a coach puffs his chest out after a big time victory, it just kind of makes sense. It embodies that song. Unfortunately, though, we do need a new non-athlete Oklahoma enthusiast. Is it Jim Ross? Is it my guy Tarinoka? Like that makes most sense, probably.
Yeah, you know, Dari's everywhere too, so that would be a good one. You know, Brad Pitt has some Oklahoma in him. I don't know how and I don't know where, but when Oklahoma played in the Rose Bowl at Baker Mayfield's final year, I think it was 17. Suddenly, there's all these shots of Brad Pitt in the stands wearing OU gear, and it's like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool, but I don't know if I've seen him since. Bill Hader, Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
He grew up in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. So I don't know if he can slide in and be our Oklahoma guy. Would love to have him at more events. But yeah, JR, good old Jim Ross, man. That's our guy right there. Funny story, whenever I loved wrestling as a kid. I still love it today. But my first knowing what Oklahoma was Jim Ross talking about Oklahoma. And thus I've been here now for 30 years. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, JR, and then we'll find out about Bill Hader. We'll find out about Brad Pitt's tie. And then why do I always forget the guy who's married to Gwen Stefani?
Blake Shelton.
Blake Shelton's from Ada, Oklahoma. So, but I think he might be more of an Oklahoma State guy. I don't know, and that's fine. But man, we've got some options, I think there are in the country music world.
There's a lot of options in country. There's almost too many options. Like Carrie, Miranda Lambert, or you could probably –
Carrie's an Oklahoma girl, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably go up and down, but it almost feels like we should just leave the country music slot for Toby Keith. It's just as it relates to Oklahoma athletics. If somebody stepped in and all of a sudden is at every single Oklahoma sporting event's like, oh, I got to do this. That was in country music. It'd be a little bit tough. So yeah, maybe
you know what?
Someone else.
Let me go ahead because there's a chance they could see it. Every member of Kings of Leon, diehard Oklahoma fans. So maybe there's our guys right there. And I know not only are they diehard fans, but they'll show up at games. They'll post on message boards. They'll be guests on podcasts Yeah, the Kings of Leon crew. That's probably right up there with JR right now.
Big music state, Oklahoma is, man.
Look at
It's
us.
unbelievable. It really is. What's the feeling in Norman after Dylan Gabriel left for Oregon, Jeff Lebby left for Mississippi State? Because everything that I've been able to kind of gather is that there is a lot of internal confidence about this Jackson Arnold, Seth Littrell duo and what they could be capable of doing.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. There's a ton of internal confidence. And, it's interesting. It was a bad bowl game, right? I mean, you have 6 turnovers, and not all of them, obviously, on Jackson Arnold. But I'm one of those people that think they're going to be better for it. It's funny. I bring up the Sugar Bowl after the 2013 season, so the 2014 Sugar Bowl. Oklahoma won that, and we thought they're on a rocket ship. Look out, Trevor Knight's coming back. It's going to be, and then it doesn't necessarily go so well for him, and that was a really, really rough 2014 season. So, bowl momentum is always a fun debate. I don't know if it exists. But with Nico and Tennessee, they feel like they've got all the momentum in the world because he had a good bowl game, right? Jackson Arnold, I think nationally people look at it as like, oh, how many interceptions did he throw? It's going to suck. But in that same vein, I think it was great for him. I think he learned a lot. I think that was the first time that Seth Littrell had called plays in a really long time. And I feel like they got a pretty good understanding of what works and what doesn't work. And I think it's one of the most fascinating springs that Oklahoma's had in a long time. Spring football, it starts next Monday for OU. Their spring game is April 20th. But outside of Brent Venables' first season, whenever it was how dare Lincoln Riley leave us, the snake, mule shoe snake, and all that, and the juice to say we're fine. You're going into a new conference, new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, and Zach Alley coming over. A lot of intriguing names coming in a very ballyhooed and talked about recruiting class. So, yeah, the confidence is high because Jackson Arnold had been that guy through everything that had stayed with Oklahoma, through a really bad first season. He stayed. Through Sitton last year, he stayed. Through Jeff Lebby leaving, he stayed. And he had always seemed to be that dude that wants to be the guy. He can sling it. He can move. He's a true dual threat quarterback. So there is a lot of internal confidence because I feel like the internal confidence that Jackson F and Arnold, that's what they go by as Sooner bit. There's a lot of confidence that JFA seems to have. And, it's just they really seem to have surrounded him with a lot of good weapons. Now, biggest question in spring bowl is going to be how the offensive line comes together. But the national narrative on Oklahoma could not be more different than what the internal narrative on Oklahoma is in their future right now.
I agree with that. And I went back and I watched the bowl game because, I'm very much, I am the leader of the Noah Fafita bandwagon. So it's hard for me to look at things besides him. But right. I wanted to go back and look at this because I was examining, why there's really not a typical year 2 progression for a 5-star quarterback in the SEC. If you go back the last decade plus. And I thought there was a lot more good than bad in that bowl game from what he did, despite the fact that obviously the turnovers are going to stand out. But, he doesn't just have the 5-star billing to live up to, as Oklahoma fans know. He's got the Oklahoma billing to live up to as a quarterback. What should SEC fans who maybe weren't as dialed into his recruitment and this JFA mantra that he's taken on, like what should SEC fans know about Jackson Arnold?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, this is like the first thing I think 99.9% of people that cover a team say about a guy. So here we go. He's a good kid. I mean, he really, truly is. I don't think we're ever going to have to worry about seeing Jackson Arnold getting in trouble away from the field. He's very grounded. He's very sharp. He's very smart. And moments, even with the mistakes in the Alamo Bowl, I don't think you ever saw panic. I don't think you ever saw a lack of confidence. So he's a very, very confident guy. It's kind of wild. You mentioned the recruitment of him because I talked about never wavering. He never wavered. He had made that commitment from, Denton Geyer, and it never wavered. You want to talk about Peyton Bowen. Peyton Bowen was a guy that, ripped the shirt off and committed to Oregon and then mislabeled something on his letter of intent, changed his mind, came to Oklahoma. Jackson Arnold never had that. He was OU all the way. And, I think it's tough for the fan base whenever you hear about a 5-star guy and how great he's going to be, and then he doesn't play. It's like you get in your mind, this is our savior. This is the guy that's going to bring us back. Then he's sitting on the bench all year long. So I think that was kind of hard for fans. But for him personally, this has been his place. This has been where he wants to be. And he kind of, for me, and I got to know him okay. I can't sit there and talk like we're best friends. But he seems to really embrace that Baker was here, Kyler was here. That you want to go Heupel, Aikman. All right, well, Aikman's a long time ago. But he kind of really embraces that history, that lineage of it. And he wants to be the next great one. So never wavered. I mean, Oklahoma through and through, and appears to be a guy that's ready to help lead this team into the SEC. That was a big thing for him, to be on the ground floor of this. And I think you're seeing in the preparation and hearing him talk this offseason, he seems to really have a good grip on what it takes to be the face of the program.
There's a wild stat that he's trying to end, actually. And I didn't realize it was this crazy until I dug this up and I had to look this up. But the last Oklahoma starting quarterback who started and finished his career in Norman was Blake Bell, who changed to tight end. Which,
that's right.
So if you want to say the last Oklahoma starting quarterback who started and finished his career as a quarterback in Norman was Landry Jones.
That's wild.
I mean, he's 35. Like, is that a problem? Despite all the success of the 2010s and everything that happened, like, is that an issue that hangs over the program, or is that just something for nerds like me to look up and bring up on podcasts?
No, because I love it. I love it. It's kind of funny because we thought Spencer Rattler or Caleb Williams was going to be the guy that ended that trend, right? Let's go back, well, we don't have to go back to Landry Jones because we know, and you talked about Blake Bell, who moved to tight end. But, after that, Baker transferred from Tech, Kyler transferring from A&M, Jalen transferring from Philadelphia, transferring from Alabama, playing for Philadelphia now. But Spencer Rattler, okay, in the Lincoln Riley mantra, when he came in, dude, he was supposed to be the guy. There were people that were mad near the end of 2019 that wanted Spencer Rattler to play over Jalen Hurts. Now, no one will admit to that now, but in certain things that I stand out, I'm like, that's a really bad take. I remember looking back and thinking, that's a really bad take. Not because of anything negative against Spencer, but just Jalen Hurts was really good. Spencer Rattler was the guy that was handpicked. This is the guy that could best run Lincoln Riley's offense. He's from day one and was also OU through and through from the moment that he committed. And then lo and behold, some guy named Caleb Williams showed up, and the rest was history for him. So that's a wild stat. I don't think it looms. I think it was something that was really big during the Lincoln era, where fans and I think pundits, they're like, can't he develop a quarterback? He's picking up these guys, and they've already, been in a certain phase in their progress. But I think, this is me, I think that's something you're going to see that Brent Venables at Oklahoma is going to try to do. I think going forward, if Oklahoma has to go get a quarterback out of the portal, then it's because of injury, or it's because, one of the backups transferred and they need more depth. Because I start thinking about the future, and you would think this is pretty laid out for Oklahoma. It's going to be Jackson Arnold for the next couple of years, and then you hope he's at a point where he can turn pro. And then when he's done, Michael Hawkins, high-profile recruit who's waiting in the wings and will learn for 2 years. And then when he's gone, Kevin Sperry, who had played high school ball at Texas. He's now here in Oklahoma. He's playing at Midwest City. So actually, Midwest City, I think that's right.
Nobody's fact-checking you on that. You're good.
Okay. But he moved to Oklahoma, and he's playing high school ball here locally. So you think, boom, 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 you have your next 3 quarterbacks. So is it something that lingers? Maybe for a past generation. But the feeling is now you've got your quarterback room hypothetically set up for quite a while. And I don't know how much you'll see Oklahoma having to use or work in the portal for that in the future if things pan out.
Plus, you got Casey Thompson, the ageless wonder, who's somehow still has eligibility coming in.
Oh, unreal. God. He's still around. Love to see it.
Yeah, I actually like. There's a part of me that wants to see him in the exact right situation, and if something were to happen to Jackson Arnold, that's one of the better insurance policies I think you can
Absolutely.
have at this level. The defensive side of the ball, it's been a very popular topic of conversation outside of quarterback in Oklahoma. It fell off a bit last year at the meat of the schedule, but I keep defaulting to this as we project for what they're going to do year one in the SEC. You got 2 preseason All-Americans back in Stutzman and Bowman coming back, plus a year 3 Brent Venables defense that's 8th in America in percentage of returning defensive production, the great stat that Bill Connolly puts together. What's a fair expectation for this group? Because it feels like if there is ever a time to see one of these elite defenses in Norman again, now has to be it.
Fair expectation. What the fans' expectation is to shut out everyone every single game, and that's to be expected, right? I think a fair expectation is to see that improvement continue, right? Oklahoma missed on a couple of guys in the portal, but Brent Venables would tell you, we didn't miss on many. We didn't offer a lot, and I thought that was pretty telling. You mentioned Stutzman and Bowman. I think the development of a guy that SEC fans are going to love, his name's Kip Lewis. He's another linebacker. Kobe McKenzie, another linebacker. I think Woody Washington coming back at one of the corners is a massive deal for them. Gentry Williams just had a surgical procedure, so I don't know I think he's out for the spring. But you have 3 pretty high-profile recruits from last year's class in Makari Vickers, Josiah Wagner, and Jacoby Johnson that I think can factor in there at corner. And they brought in Des Malone to transfer out of San Diego State. I don't know if he's going to be a corner or a safety. But all of those areas you feel strong about, right? It's just what will the interior of that defensive line look like? They got a big blow this week, man. They lost Jacob Lacey, and I don't know the timing of it, but Brent Venables went on Gabe and Teddy's podcast, the Oklahoma Breakdown, and said that he's had a blood clot issue, so he had to retire from football. Well, he played a lot of snaps on the interior. He was a Notre Dame transfer, and really once he got cleared last year because he was having the same problems, he kind of had that look. You're like, hey, that's an SEC defensive tackle. If David Stone, the freshman, can be that dude in the interior, and you hate counting on a freshman at defensive tackle, right? Nothing against David Stone. It's just the history. They got another big kid that's coming in on the interior that's been here for since this semester. The expectations of this defense are going to be high because Brent Venables is here. They brought in Zach Alley from Western Kentucky, who is or not Western Kentucky, Birmingham, who has been kind of a right-hand guy of Brent Venables, Jacksonville State, sorry. Been a right-hand man of Brent Venables for a long time. So they bring him in. You think he's going to call the defense now that Ted Roof has moved on, but we'll see. But I name all that stuff to say the improvement in year 3 had always been a big one for Brent Venables historically. Go back to, Oklahoma's was a little bit quicker. It helped them that they had Roy Williams and Teddy Lehman and Rocky Kalmus and Lance Mitchell that were all there, or Torrance Marshall that were all there. Clemson's was pretty substantial from year 1 to year 2, and then year 3 they took off. I would expect that same growth, but there's not that NFL defensive tackle that has experience. They might be there in Jackson and Stone, but right now it's just that's the big question. Where are they on the interior? Because that's where you need to be really good in this conference, and I think it's a big question mark for them. But I would expect them to continue to get better because of Brent, because of Danny, because of Billy Bowman being back. But they've really got questions, I think, that I can't wait to see how they're answered on the interior of that defensive line.
Feels like that was the question even back in 2021 when Texas.
It's been a question nonstop, right? Yep. Since Joe McCoy.
Yeah, and it could be one of those areas where all of a sudden we're looking up and we're like, wow, they go on this run of cranking out NFL defensive tackles, and then pretty quickly, we move on to something else. I was crunching the numbers on the Venables buyout because that's what we do in the SEC. We don't talk about buyouts. Like it's a big thing, and heading into year 3, it's still over $22 million, which sounds like a lot because it is. Mm-hmm. He's entering year 3 of a 6-year deal, and that regular season win total is 7.5, which that is very noteworthy considering the history, considering the expectations, all those different things. The schedule is daunting. But as weird as it sounds, history suggests that when you're in this spot after year 3, you're either getting extended or you're getting fired. What's your take on that discussion and his future long term?
I think the administration is very happy with what Brent Venables is doing. Now, if they go out and they go 2-10 in the SEC, we're having a different conversation. But he's getting a fourth year. He's going to be here for 4 years. Now, what happens after that, we'll see. He's beloved. They won 10 games this year. It hurts that the losses were Oklahoma State and Kansas. But you also, you lost Danny Stutzman in one game and you didn't play in the other. And some of the most ridiculous mistakes were made in that Oklahoma State game that still boggle my mind. So that sucks, right? They got to win. And Brent Venables knows that. Everything that the stuff that we never talk about, right? The stuff that fans don't care about, he's doing. Setting the foundation of, preparing these guys for life after football. They have they have a program that they've had, the soul mission is what they call it. So he's doing all these things to prepare these guys for life. And, in fairness, they're getting better on the football field. So I would say, what's something I can bet? I would bet my right arm that Brent Venables is coaching Oklahoma at least through the first 4 years of his contract. Now, if things fall apart in the SEC this year, okay, that fifth year gets really, really dicey. But Joe Castiglione's happy. Donors are happy. Coach Venables hasn't come in here and been a guy that says NIL that's not how we're going to do it. They get it. They understand it. Now, I don't think you're going to see him going out and buying a recruiting class. I don't think that's ever going to be the way. And who knows what the rules look like here in a little bit. But I think there's still a high level of belief. I know there is. And it's a daunting schedule. You're right. But he's going to be back in 2025. All my years are running together. And I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma, gets that over and wins 9 games. It wouldn't surprise me at all as if he's extended. In other words, I don't think he's even on a tepid seat right now. I think everyone's really happy. Everyone knows the grind is there. And we'll kind of see how this thing plays out in the SEC. Now, if Maine beats them, all right, I withdraw putting my right arm on the table here to potentially be a wager piece. But I think that the signs are pointing up. Oklahoma has not recruited on the defensive side of the football well in a long time. And now you're starting to see those pieces come in. You're starting to see those pieces play a major role. So I think it's pretty secure. But you got to win. You got to win football games the next 2 years.
The positive of that schedule being so daunting is that you're probably looking at this going, man, this is going to be fun. We got some big time headliner type games.
Yes.
Like, what's the game that the new SEC game? Because I buried the lead. You're wearing a Beat Texas shirt right now. So I know
that's right.
I know the game that you're most looking forward to, but what's the new SEC game that you're most looking forward to on that schedule?
Well, I think there's 2 that jump out. Everyone's going to say Alabama, but let's see what Alabama looks like. It's Nick Saban's not there anymore. I think they're very talented. I think they're very good. One, Tennessee, and here's why. Josh Heupel's coming back to town.
Yep.
I don't have to tell anyone the history. They listen, they watch you, they know. He won a Heisman Trophy here. The fallout after he was fired as an offensive coordinator in 13, it's not been pretty. So 13, 14, excuse me. All my years are running together. I'm getting old. I'm almost 50 now, so everything's running together. But I'm really excited to see how this team handles road venues. The Auburn game is going to be fascinating. But I can't wait to go to the Bayou. I can't wait to be at LSU. I can't wait to see what that looks like. I feel like we've been trying the SEC, it appears, has been trying to find something on Thanksgiving weekend for LSU. It's like they've been trying to. There was Missouri. There was Arkansas for
A&M.
A&M. Sorry, A&M, not Missouri. A&M for the longest time. I kind of thought, that's it. And then Arkansas before that. Darren McFadden. We got that wood. But I think that could be something really cool for Oklahoma and LSU. I'm a firm believer that it's the coolest atmosphere in college football. I've been there for baseball. I've been there for softball. I've been there for basketball. I can't wait to be there for a football game on Thanksgiving weekend just to see what that's like, because I think I think it's got a chance to be a game that has a lot at stake. And in the 12-team playoff, who knows,
Yeah.
what could be on the line at that point. I was listening to a conversation about, is LSU a national championship contender this year? I felt like we were having this same conversation last year about a handful of teams that it never really materialized. Is LSU that team? Maybe so. It's year 3 for Brian Kelly too. So, but that's as far as environments and as far as games. I can't wait to see Baton Rouge at night for the Sooners and LSU.
You'll love it. I mean, I have not been there at night, but Death Valley is.
I'm hoping it's at night. I can't make too many assumptions yet.
I would assume
Right.
they're gonna try and make that happen tonight, especially as you're trying to establish a rivalry and do those
Sure.
things. That would make a lot of sense. That Tennessee game in week 4, I'm gonna call my shot. I'm gonna say that game day is gonna go to Norman. I'm gonna say that they're gonna go to Norman for that one instead of USC Michigan, because I'm assuming that game day will be in Ann Arbor 2 weeks earlier for the Texas Michigan game. So they're not gonna go to Michigan twice in the month of September. Big Noon Kickoff will probably be there as well. Those rivalries are going to become a lot more, noteworthy, I think, as we get into this new media rights era. But I'm putting you on the spot here. Do you know the last time that game day was in Norman when there were fans there?
Notre Dame.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I could not believe that. 2012 we're talking about.
We got smoked. But what's funny is it was a good game. It's the things that you remember. It was a good game, and then I think it was George Atkinson broke a big run, and it was like left lane hammer down from there. Funny sidebar to that. Same night James Harden got traded. So it was literally we're in the post game show. We're in the post game show, and your dad's like, we lost to Notre Dame. That stinks. And then literally during the post game show, the voice of the Sooners, Toby Rowland, he said, "Hey, by the way, James Harden just got traded." Like, what? So, yeah, it's been a minute. Game day's been at OU, Texas. Game day's been at road trips. And you mentioned, I think they came in, 2020 once?
Yeah, 2020 came once. Yeah.
Yeah, but as far as fans being there, it's been a minute night. That'd be really cool. I think it'd be great for both programs. Tennessee's been here. Yeah. And we've been to Tennessee. We went to Tennessee. There's the 50th week. Oklahoma went to Tennessee with Baker Mayfield and the infamous, Shush game. They'd come here the year before, and Julian Wilson had like 100-yard in a pick 6. So there's some really cool relationships between OU and Tennessee fans that had been developed. And there had been the non-conference game that they were supposed to play that got kind of booted as part of this new SEC alliance for Oklahoma. I'm really excited about that game. I hope you're right. And now you've given me something to talk about on my local show for the rest of the week, because if you've gone that in depth on where game day is going to be, I need to get in that rhythm. I need to be in that place right now, because that's the kind of content that I'm here for.
SaturdayDownSouth.com. I mapped out all 7. Yes, I mapped out the 7 most likely game day spots.
I gotta go now.
Yeah, it's up there. I think I had that at 5, and I regretted not putting it higher. I should have probably put it at 4. But I had Bama LSU at 4, but that's the same weekend as Ole Miss and the Georgia Ole Miss game, and then it's like, and Mizzou. I think Mizzou and Oklahoma are that weekend as well. So like that weekend is really active. But the one
stuff,
when you actually sit there and go through all this stuff. Right. I do it in February and March pretty much every year.
That's awesome.
Like, what else do I want to be doing right now? Well, I'm not as big into hoops as others are, so it takes up some time.
Are you buying Tennessee right now?
I am buying the Tennessee offense, and I am buying James Pierce, preseason All-American on that defensive line. The Tennessee offense should be
really good.
Yeah, he is an absolute monster whenever he's on the field. But the Tennessee offense is so exciting. You bring up Nico earlier. And in a very similar spot as Jackson Arnold, obviously the bowl game start and how that can shape our perception for an entire offseason. But the belief that Heupel will get back to having a top 8 offense, I think, is very much on the table because of Nico, because of all the buzz he has coming in as the most hyped Tennessee quarterback recruit since Peyton Manning. I mean, yeah, I am more of a believer than not. I think it's fair that Tennessee and Oklahoma both have 12-team playoff expectations.
Yeah, I am. I started doing a little work on Tennessee this week, just kind of digging a little bit. I'm all in on the softball world, but there's downtime you have, airport waits, things of that nature. And I started doing just a look at the schedule, look at the depth chart, reading some of the different articles. You're like, dang, they're really good. So not the best. There's going to be cool storylines leading into that with hype coming back and all, but that's going to be a real challenging one right out of the gate for the Sooners.
You just got to hype them up the entire 8-month offseason.
That's right.
By the time that game day rolls around, yeah, I think they're a top 5 team. I think they could win a national championship.
They might win the title.
I want to get you out of here with this, and you can take this any way that you want.
Okay.
You can either sell SEC fans on making a trip to Norman, and or you can explain to SEC fans what they should know about Oklahoma as they enter the conference.
Ooh, let me do a little bit of both. Number one, our city, the city where I live. Now, technically, I live a little bit south. I'm out in the country. I'm trying to play farmer. But the city of Norman has embraced the expectations that come with the SEC. By that, I mean, they know there's going to be more people traveling in with RVs, and there's going to be more need for restaurants and things of that nature. But it's become a really cool area because in it you have not just Norman, you have Moore, you have Oklahoma City. So you come in town for a game. All right, maybe you time it right. You go watch a Thunder game too. And check out OKC, one of the best young teams in the NBA. There's fancy dining, and there's my kind of dining, to where you can go to Rudy's, or you can go to one. They have a great burger place on campus called O'Connell's. There's a place called the Mott's where their queso is to die for, and they've got a drink called the Swirl. 2 of those, you're good. Go 3, see you tomorrow. So there's a lot of really cool places to eat. There's a lot of Trey Young just opened up what's the Young Family Athletic Center. They call it the YFAC. Whole new area of town, University of North Park, that's growing up. You love Norman if you like to play golf. Toby Keith's golf course, he has golf course, got the trails. And the campus is really cool too, and it's growing. We just opened up a new softball field. Baseball is having to get renovated because you got to have a cathedral in baseball in the SEC. Golf courses, I mentioned galore, so it's a cool town. Why? Now, what was the second question? I forgot already.
What should SEC fans know about Oklahoma? Like, what's the biggest thing, or maybe a misconception that SEC fans might have right now that you would want corrected?
Well, they're not coming in here to play second-class citizen. Oklahoma's not joining the SEC to just say, "Hey, high five. Where's our paycheck for the TV rights deal?" This administration has known from the moment that this move was made that everything needs to step up and everything needs to improve. And you've seen it in the facilities that have been overhauled, even the football facility that has been overhauled and has been restructured and re-engineered. Oklahoma's not coming into this to be a second-class citizen. They, as a program, as every program, are coming in to say we're here to compete. I think most fan bases get that. I really do. But there's always been like this pushback from a couple of different levels of fans where it's like, yeah, no one really cares about you guys coming here. It's like, oh, okay, that's fine. But Oklahoma's not coming in here with this mindset that they're going to be 1 year competing for like second or third place, and then the next 5 years just hoping to get bowl eligible. They're here to try to be Bama. They're here to try to be Georgia. They're here to try to be a national championship contender year in and year out. It's gonna be tough, right? I mean, this is a different level of schedule, football-wise, baseball-wise, softball-wise, basketball-wise, that they've ever seen. I mean, you could maybe argue that the only sport to where you're getting a little bit of a break might be basketball. But then in that same vein, you're going into a place where in women's, you got the defending national champs, Kim Mulkey. Yep. And on the men's side of things, Bruce Pearl's not backing down at Auburn. Kentucky's still great. I understand what's going on with Nate Oates, and they had a kind of a tough outing as we taped this last night. But I think that's what people should know. Oklahoma's not just coming in to cash a check. They want to compete, and they want you to come here. The game day environment has improved so much over the last few years because they want it to be a place where opposing SEC fans come in and say, this is awesome, and we want to come back, and we want to bring our families, and we want to bring our friends. It's not just cashing a check. It's not just making sure ends meet. We're coming here to try to win titles, try to kick some backside and win championships. And I think that they're ready. Now we'll see. You can get a good old what's the great Mike Tyson line? Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. So we'll find out pretty quick. But Oklahoma's making this move to try to compete and to try to be elite, and they have been for the entire history of their program. So now it's a chance to see, at least in the football side of things, can they take that next step up?
I need to make a trip. I have not been. You had me at queso. I mean,
best queso I've ever had, man. Vermont. Oh my gosh. In fact, I think I'm going to go get some as soon as we're done here. I've got a softball game tonight. It's not till 6. I can't have a swirl, maybe after the game, but you can't go wrong. There's great restaurants here. There's great people. I think you'll like the people here. It's a really cool town. I've lived here in Norman since, well, I live in Goldsby, but it's Norman proper. I moved down here in 15. I've been in Oklahoma my whole adult life. It's really an underrated state.
Last one. How much horns down is too much horns down?
No such thing.
Yeah, okay.
No such thing. In fact, I don't know what's going on with Rodney Terry this year. I love that man, but my gosh, he's gotten to a level of soft that I'm not comfortable with. And you know what's kind of funny is I don't think a majority of Texas fans mind it too much.
Agreed. Agreed.
I think a majority of Texas fans are like, you're so enamored with making us a part of your celebration. But there's like these very loud, vocal, kind of smaller groups that just freak out about it. So no such thing as too much horns down. You can do it as much as you want, anytime, anywhere. It's a beautiful thing.
Chris, really appreciate it, man. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah, anytime. I love this. Thanks for having me, man.
Jersey contest. It is my turn. I feel like I've worn a lot of Cubs jerseys. This is my third Cubs jersey for the jersey contest, Will.
Mm-hmm.
Third blue Cubs jersey. I don't have any white Cubs jerseys left. I don't think. Yeah, I don't. Gosh. Got rid of the Soriano jersey a little bit ago. Didn't see the need to keep that one around as much.
Yeah.
I close my eyes.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Any guesses on who this blue Cubs jersey could be? It is not a current Cub. He has not even played for the Cubs in the last 10 years.
Okay, you said the most liked Cub. I'm going to go Ernie Banks.
See, I've already worn an Ernie Banks jersey.
Yeah.
So it is not, in fact,
Dang.
Ernie Banks. I meant more liked, not by Cub fans, but by everyone who listens to this show. I'll give you one more guess based on that parameter.
Anyone who listens to the show, the guy I would guess is pretty divisive. Let's see. Man, I actually don't know that. Who would that be?
Greg Maddux, Will.
Oh,
it's Greg Maddux.
There you go. Yeah.
Yep. We got the white lettering. I don't know why they went with just like pure white lettering without the red borders on this one. You can see. So here's the thing. This is a sore subject jersey for like Cub fans in general. To wear a Greg Maddux jersey in public is to acknowledge failure. That's what it is. Very few jerseys do that unless you're trying to be ironic. But wearing a Greg Maddux jersey, and perhaps the reason I do not wear this jersey very often is because it acknowledges pain and pain of my childhood. Because, you know, when a guy is like coming off of a 20-win season, he's been in your organization for the first 7 years of his career, he's entering free agency, you would hope that your franchise would say, oh, this guy's like one of the best pitchers in baseball. Let's pay him money. And then like they don't. And then he goes on to become one of the best pitchers of the last 50 years and, you know, wins a World Series and, you know, even pitches a shutout in his debut against his former team. Like Greg Maddux is all of those things. And this jersey is actually from when he returned to the team 2004 after, you know, 11 years with the Braves, to have a Hall of Famer like who like spent all of that time being so great elsewhere that the Cubs were like, let's just get nothing in return. Cool. This is great.
Or things the Cubs would never do today.
Oh, golly. You know what?
I had to make a joke once.
Why do we need an ace? Why do we need an ace when we have, you know, Kevin Tapani, Steve Traxel, Terry Mulholland? I could do this forever. My friends and I do this way too much. Who needs an ace? Who needs a Greg Maddux? Let him do his thing, throwing 87-mile-an-hour fastballs that paint the corner because Javi Lopez is sitting there with a foot, you know, like a foot just barely in the strike zone, and he frames it perfectly. No big deal. Let's just let that guy walk. Let's not bitter at all. The story that I think I've told in these airwaves, and I'm going to repeat myself probably, I've told this at one point or another, probably multiple times. When I was bat boy for a day for the Cubs, 2004, one of the coolest experiences of my life. In the locker room before the game, and somewhere before or after Joe Borowski telling me, "Hey kid, I'm eating." Piss off. Some point, I think it might have been post game. One of the loudest farts I've ever heard. One of the loudest farts I've ever heard in my life. And there was no mistaking who it was. It was Greg Maddux. Mm-hmm. It was the type of fart that was so loud and prolonged that while it's happening, you can look over at the person doing it and see their expression, and to have no expression whatsoever. People always say like, oh, when a serial killer is in court and they don't have any sort of expression on their face, and how telling that is. Watching him let go of this in that setting and have no reaction from himself or from the entire surroundings, that tells you everything you need to know. Greg Maddux, historic pranker in many, many ways. Historic releaser of gas, as I found out. I think I got this jersey after that, which is even more amazing. Bigger testament to his legacy. Always loved Greg Maddux. Not better at all.
I actually, funny enough, when you told that story, I imagined him with the Braves. So the fact that I was, and I was going to ask you which Cubs stint is this from, because that does look a little bit like newer. So yeah, I think that's an all-time jersey, to be honest. This is gonna sound like a side tangent, but I promise you it's not. Sometimes when I'm in a certain state of mind, I think to myself what I would do with superpowers. Do you ever think about that?
I have a flying dream, not every month, maybe every other month, but flight is a big passion of mine. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Great. Okay. So I imagine what I would do with different superpowers. And I think if I had the ability of like teleportation or something like that.
Sure.
Greg Maddux feels like a guy who could teleport the baseball. And that, like, it was as if he woke up with superpowers as a baby. And like, that was it. And he just kept it under wraps. Like, he didn't, didn't throw super fast or anything, but he could just put the baseball exactly where it needed to go every single time. And that type of pitcher doesn't really exist today. Like, if they do some of that, they also throw it fast and they're not as consistent, they don't go as long and all that different stuff. And like, he is my number one suspect of person who secretly has superpowers, even though he was a gold glover, stuff like that. He's nappy. I'm not saying he's not, but the fact that dude just didn't age at all, he was just able to like boop boop boop. It was like he was controlling the baseball with his mind. So I'm on to you, Greg Maddux. I think you may have superpowers.
Greg Maddux is the equivalent of the rec league hoops player that just is wet from everywhere, just doesn't miss a shot. You're like,
and you get mad. You're like, why isn't this guy somewhere else? Like, why is he here?
Yeah, like what is he doing? Just running this court for 3 hours. He doesn't get tired. He doesn't miss. This guy is on every single winning team. That is Greg Maddux. Yeah, his ability to locate a pitch is the best that I have ever seen. Like, if we found out one day that Greg Maddux would just transport into the baseball and was actually controlling these baseballs as they would approach home plate, and he was being like, "Oh no, we're going to go to this part of Hobby's glove. This is how we're going to do this." Wouldn't surprise me, not at all.
The Force, in a way,
Yeah, very much so. Greg Maddux with superpowers. I'm on board with that. Yeah, very much so. All right, I think we have another round of jersey contest to be able to vote on, so look out for that. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at Set Down South, at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Leave us a 5-star review. Go watch us on YouTube. Saturday Down South on YouTube. You can watch every single episode of the Saturday Down South podcast on our YouTube channel. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.